All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Daniel Rennell, pronouns he, him. I am the Director of Programs and Operations at the Bronx River Alliance. We're a couple other hacks also. We're hosting a virtual information session about the Cross Bronx Expressway 5 Bridges project. We've seen the presentation a couple times from New York State DOT and wanted to have some conversations with community about this very big project. So we're also joined, as was put in the chat. We've got a couple organizations supporting this information sharing and discussion, Loving the Bronx and the Bronx Council for Environmental Quality. So I know Milka is here representing both of those organizations. I'm also on the Bronx Council for Environmental Quality, a group that's been around for a long time and has been supported even the founding of the Bronx River Alliance in the past. So we will talk a little bit about the overview. We'll have Nick give us an overview. We will share some potential implications and impacts of the project. We'll hear a little bit about the Reimagine the Cross Bronx and Cap the Cross Bronx initiatives. We'll let you know about some upcoming meetings on April 24th and April 18th. Both, I think, will be virtual and in person. And we'll have some time for some discussion questions that we've prepared, as well as hearing, what concerns and what thoughts come up when you hear more about this project. And it's a large project. We are sharing a few of the slides that we think are important to understanding the scale and impact. And there is more information, and it's a lot to take in. So just want to thank you all for being here. I'm going to hand it off to Nick to do an overview. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please do put them in the chat. And Nick, you just let me know when you want me to move slides.
Awesome. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yep.
Fantastic. So like Denny mentioned, my name is Nick. I'm the recreation coordinator for the Bronx River Alliance. And like it says up here, this is mainly a bridge replacement project. It's going to cost about $900 million. It's coming in a little under that at the current estimate, knowing what we know about infrastructure projects like this. It'll probably wind up being a little more than that. It's going to involve 5+ years of continued construction along the Cross Bronx corridor between Boston Road and Rosedale Avenue. And the plan is to replace a series of bridges that are along the span. Thank you, Danny. You can see they're numbered throughout here. So these are the actual points of construction. An important thing to note with these is that these are all existing bridges that do need to be replaced. As much as we would love for the option to be to not do any of this construction, the reality is that these bridges do need to be repaired and replaced. Hence the plan that is trying to be put into place right now, in which they will each single-handedly be torn down and entirely rebuilt while traffic along the Cross Bronx is rerouted. What you can't see on this slide is that they're actually going to build 2 roadways that are basically like arterial service roads along the 2 outsides of the CBE. They will then reroute traffic onto those roads while the construction is being done and while all these bridges are being torn down and replaced. And then once that has been done, those structures that are being used as those temporary roadways will actually, under the current plan, stay in place as what they are calling a multimodal community connector roadway, which boils down basically to being a service road. You can see a rendering of it right here. That is going to run parallel to the existing Cross Bronx once it has been repaired. Those are going to run, there's going to be one to the south and one to the north. And they are going to have entry and exit points on I'm blanking right now, but you can see it in this top little image right here, those two yellow dotted lines. I don't know if, Danny, you have the ability to put on the laser pointer mode on your screen, but there's a little red arrow, yeah, pointing towards it. So those are our two connector roadways that are running alongside. You can also see renderings of it down below. One thing to note with these is that they are planning on putting in on them pedestrian walkways, biking lane, a biking area, two bus lanes, and two, a northbound or a eastbound and a westbound bus lane on each one, and a lane going in each direction for private vehicles on each one. If you want to go to the next slide, please. So there are actually proposed versions of what this roadway could look like. Basically, the only difference between them is whether there is one sidewalk or two sidewalks on the edges. So one thing you'll note is that there's a pretty clear lack of green space on this. There's a lot of impermeable surface that's being added. We'll get into that when we talk about the environmental impacts, but just something to keep in mind. It's also a caged walkway along the edge, which we can get into whether we think that is good for community walkability and whether people will actually use this space to walk on. But it also puts us right next to these bus lanes and includes roadways for private vehicles that are being added. A thing to note with these bus lanes is that as currently placed, there is no bus line that runs through this section and will actively use these added bus lanes. So there would be, in theory, a plan to add bus rapid transit around them. Although, as presented by state DOT so far, there is no plan around what that actual added bus lane would be or who it would service. You can keep going to the next slide. So here we get another look at what this multimodal connector roadway could look like. You can see that kind of caged walkway that's going underneath the expressway there. That gives you an idea of what this space would actually look like for pedestrians, and whether this space is actually something that pedestrians would take advantage of or we would consider to be a pedestrian-friendly piece of infrastructure. You can also see it does go underneath the expressway as well, while linking on to, I think this is Boston Road. No, it's not, because Boston's up there. I'm not sure which specific road.
It's Bronx River Avenue.
Thank you, Danny. So yeah, this is where it connects onto Bronx River Avenue, which is an interesting existing crosswalk as is. There's a bunch of kind of looping that you can't see off on the sides here as well. That is going to be to make these roadways ADA compliant. And if we want to go to the next slide, we can get an idea of what this is going to look like from on the ground. And you can see actually where this connector roadway is going to come up from underneath the expressway and spiral out around to then continue on. Yes, thank you, Victoria. Those are the two proposed landing points for the roadway. They are also planning on adding a loop on the other side. There is no existing plan to connect any part of this multimodal connector roadway onto the parks, at least as was last shown to us during the meetings. A thing to note is that some of these renderings and descriptions have changed as meetings have gone on and as we have seen new designs, as this is something that is currently in the process of being worked on. Here you can see the proposal for what it looks like on the connector roadway with a path on either side. Again, there's very little difference here. And this is just kind of providing caged walkways on the edges as opposed to anything substantial or protected for pedestrians or any kind of green space within. Next, I think that's probably all of them. Yeah.
All right, I can take over from here, unless you want to keep. Is there more information you want to share, Nick?
No, unless people have any really brief questions, but I haven't seen any jotted in chat. And we can get more into the weeds of things later. There's a bunch of, technicals we can get into.
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay? Is my audio coming through? If not, I can change my input. All right.
Yep, can hear you.
So as Nick mentioned, there will be a lot of impacts that we're sort of concerned about from this project. Danny, if you want to go to the next slide. So this is a video taken in 2022. We'll just watch it very briefly and click play. So I'm not sure how well all of you on this call can see this. This was when an on-ramp to the Cross Bronx was rebuilt over the Bronx River. State DOT contractors actually allowed several tons of construction debris to fall intentionally into the Bronx River. This included rebar, it included concrete, and all of the other materials that made up that on-ramp. DOT at the time tried to maintain that they were within their permits, and it took a lot of whistleblowing from community organizations like the Bronx River Alliance and some of our partners to actually get this claim investigated, and it did actually result in DOT getting a fine because they had violated environmental law. That being said, any major project that is crossing a waterway is going to have some kind of impact. Maybe DOT will not be doing this kind of direct dumping in the future, but their activities will be impacting the Bronx River, both the water itself and obviously the neighborhoods around it. During construction, we know this construction is going to last for 5 years. That is the estimate at this time. And so there's going to be lots of construction vehicles moving through these sections of the neighborhoods. This is going to create a lot of increased noise. It will probably lead to poorer air quality while this work is being done. Bronx River Alliance staff did take air quality measurements around the on-ramp deconstruction back in 2022, and there was a noticeable dip in air quality during that time. So we can only imagine, with all of the construction that's being planned for this 5 bridges proposal, we're going to see similar effects to air quality as well. Even after this construction is completed, what we know from this project is that it's going to add a lot of impervious surfaces to this section of the Cross Bronx. We're essentially creating more asphalt and more roadways, and those do not absorb rainwater. Currently, there has not been any discussion from the planners of this proposal to add green infrastructure. We haven't seen green infrastructure designs carefully integrated into this. So what that means is that with no interventions, there would be an increase in stormwater runoff from this project. And so if that does not lead to flooding, it will be handled by the New York City sewer system, and ultimately it would lead to more combined sewer overflows impacting the Bronx River, which already deals with an excess of sewer pollution as it is. So we can only imagine that this would be something that would increase with this proposal. And last but not least, of course, is the noise issue. This project would be rerouting a lot of traffic. There'd be, 5 years worth of construction noise happening. And so there would be disturbances in neighborhoods that are currently not experiencing these things right now. And so that's a consideration as well. Communities may be, feeling these disturbances and dealing with impacts that they're not currently dealing with. And that is something that we are concerned about. It's something that we are sensitive to. And that if we can address these issues now during the proposal phase before these plans actually become implemented, maybe we can curtail some of these negative impacts to the community as well. And so that's part of why we're here and having this conversation today. So maybe just try to jump ahead of some of these issues and discuss them, and hopefully we can get some of these, if there's good suggestions and recommendations, those can be worked into the proposal before it's too late, really. Any quick questions about any of that stuff?
I have a quick question. Do you guys have any suggestions regarding what we can do to curb some of these issues that you just mentioned?
Yeah, so we're going to be breaking up into breakout groups in just a bit. We'll have a chance to sort of sit down and discuss these things in more detail. If possible, we might be using the Bronx River Alliance team, so the Greenway team, Foodway team, the Ecology team, to extend these conversations if we think that there's more good recommendations that can be made. And we'll be meeting with DOT at some point in the future to talk about what's been discussed with the community and make recommendations that we hope they will, take into consideration and implement. But we're going to use these spaces now to generate some of these ideas that can help to protect both the communities and the Bronx River. With that, I think I'm going to pass it on to Sid, or am I passing it back to Nick?
Sweet. Thanks, Christian. So in addition to the dumping in the river from the construction work that Christian mentioned, as well as potential increases in air, water, and noise pollution, something else that we experienced last time with this ramp that Christian brought up was park closures. The northern end of Starlight Park was closed several times and was impossible to access from West Farms, from that neighborhood north of the park. And for those of you who don't, or who do walk and bike around the neighborhood, that is really the safest way to get into the neighborhood is from the north. And if you're gonna be rerouted, you have to go down West Farms Road, up and over the 174th Street Bridge without a ramp, and get back down into Starlight Park. And I know people consider greenways and parks to be places of recreation, but they're also places of transportation. These are transportation corridors for people who walk through the park and bike through the park to get to where they need to go. When these parks are closed, which there are all indications that the part of Starlight Park will be closed during the construction of these overpasses, that the community members will be completely sealed off from accessing different parts of these neighborhoods in Soundview, Crotona Park East, West Farms, etc. Not to mention that there are a handful of schools nearby this potential construction area as well. The Lorraine Hansberry School on West Farms Road, daycare, as well as a community garden. Drew Gardens is right on the river, just north of the Cross Bronx Expressway, and that new ramp that was built. And we hope there are no impacts to this important community space as well. And finally, the last potential implication we're going to talk about here, and we hope we can talk about more in these breakout groups, is construction and traffic. Christian brought this up, and I see Mundo brought this up in the chat as well. There is construction that's going to happen, and that means there's going to be dump trucks in the park that are going to be moving on the greenway that are in shared places with people who are walking. And as we have seen with previous work in Concrete Plant Park, in Starlight Park, there are issues with safety, significant issues with safety in the park when there is construction going on. So this is going to impact people who use the parks as a way to escape from the noise and escape from vehicle traffic. And this, not to mention the handful of other highway projects that are going on nearby, which includes the Sheridan area, the Sheridan Boulevard Expressway work that had been going on recently, as well as all the work that's going on the Bruckner that has been going on for several years at this point. And State DOT is planning to begin construction on the Bronx River Parkway in this area as well, at the same time concurrently. So that's 3 to 4 separate travel corridors for vehicles that are going to be impacted by construction, potentially increasing that noise and air pollution even further that Christian mentioned earlier. With that, I'm going to pass that on over to Nilka Martel.
Thank you so much, Sid. Good afternoon to you all. So my name is Nilka Martel. I'm the founder of Loving the Bronx, which is a grassroots organization dedicated to community building. Back in 2016, we kicked off a campaign called Cap the Cross Bronx, and it was really looking at these below grade portions of the highway and seeking to cap them. I mean, it was really a 4-point plan to reduce the air pollution, reduce the noise pollution, to reconnect neighborhoods, and to create new open spaces. In 2018, there was a case study by a group of doctors at Columbia University called The Cost Effectiveness of Capping the Cross Bronx for the Use of Parks. We were able to take this case study to our elected officials, and in 2021, they secured $2 million for a a feasibility study. So currently that feasibility study is being conducted by New York State DOT, New York City DOT, the Department of Health, and New York City Department of Planning. And it is called Reimagine the Cross Bronx. So from their website, Reimagine the Cross Bronx is a collective effort with communities to re-envision the Cross Bronx from Harlem River to the Hutchinson River Parkway, and helping to reconnect the communities divided by it and lessen the negative impacts it's had on the surrounding neighborhoods. So looking at these two projects, right, Reimagine the Cross Bronx is a feasibility study. This current project that's going on is a fully funded project, right? So the feasibility study comes up with some ideas of what can happen, and funding would have to be secured for those things to happen. But for this particular project, this money has already been secured, and this construction will start within a few years. So for the purposes of this particular project and our experience with other projects, looking at highways, particularly the conversion of the Sheridan Expressway to the Sheridan Boulevard, it's important for us, to understand that while we can provide information to state DOT about designs and concerns, and not just the impact during the construction, but the long-term impact, right? We're talking about 4 additional lanes of traffic, in conjunction with the existing Cross Bronx. They definitely have the power to take on and do whatever they feel that serves them best. That doesn't mean that we don't have any power to shape that design, but what it really does mean is that it requires all of us, right, to really, look at this, study this, to be strategic, to be really disciplined, and to find specific ways that this can benefit us, and for all of us to work collectively to support and to advocate for those benefits. And with that, I will pass it back to Daniel or Victoria.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nilka. Thanks for joining us. Thanks everyone for the overview and the details and the history. And since we've got a nice, strong group here, I think we're just going to stay in this room for our discussion. And so we did have some prompts, and again, continue putting questions in the chat. I know the timeline for construction and design has been asked, and design is set to be finished and finalized in the fall of 2024, and construction to be completed in 2030, and starting in 2026. Will there be community input sessions? They have met with some community boards, and we've heard that there's supposed to be one public community input session. We do have some meetings that we're going to share with you all, so I'll put them up on the screen. All right, that's not what I was looking for. And so on April 24th, New York State DOT will be presenting about this project around 5 o'clock. And then on April 18th at Community Board 6. These are also both in the chat with some links for more information. Elena, do you want to talk about our community discussion prompts here?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Elena. I'm an advisor with the Bronx River Alliance. I just want to make sure, though, that the questions that were put in the chat first got addressed. I know we were talking about there's some to be unnamed design session that State DOT says will take place. Unclear the relationship of that to the actual timing of the design, or how much, what's the range of design input that they are looking for at this short date. But it sounds like you did give the construction timeline, right? I'm just checking. I just want to make sure before we go into some other, right, so that it seems like there's some process questions coming up, right? About sessions, about upcoming presentations. I think we should, are you going to a particular slide, Danny, to show? Okay. you're
I
showing me
am
right-
not. I can
Okay.
also stop screen sharing if that's helpful.
It might be for a little bit. I have a sense we might call it back up, but if you can close that, and if we could invite everybody to be daring and bold and put on your camera if you're so dare, that would be most welcome, so we could see each other as much as possible as we're processing information. So that invitation is there. Thank you. Feels warmer already in here. Thanks. So I think actually what we wanted to do, so we just dropped a lot of information, right? Some of which you may have heard before, some of which might be completely new. And I think to invite actually for the folks for whom this is like pretty new, right? Like you just kind of got the basic pieces of this, to kind of just share like what is like immediately coming up for you, almost kind of like a kind of reaction moment to what we saw in the presentation. And I don't know who those folks are for whom it's pretty new. So yes, okay, look at that. There's folks raising their hands. So there's Mundo, there's Carolyn. I'm naming because we're gonna make a queue. Mundo, Carolyn, I thought I saw, Kelly, did you raise your hand? No, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Did you? You did? Great. Victor, did you also have your hand up? Or am I, no? You did it. Okay. Now Victor, he's in the know. Is there anybody else as we're just making our reaction queue here? Oh, Ramona, Brian, great. Okay, so we got some hands up. I think we do want to make sure that we have time for folks. So we're going to ask folks to do about just 2 minutes of immediate reaction, as then we're going to go into up to 2 minutes. You don't have to fill 2 minutes because that could be, a lot, before we kind of go into like broader group discussion. Daniel, do you have a hand up? Are you trying to say something?